Hi guys, welcome to this new video on Next.js 13. In this video, I will talk about Context API, how to configure Context API, how to set up, how to add its provider in our layout file, and how to utilize the data and the functions that we define inside it in whole application or a set of components. So the purpose of Context API is to share the data among multiple components rather than passing the data through props drilling from parent components to child components. So this is a small application that I'll be building using the Context API. So this is the CRUD application, and you can see that this data is coming from the Context API state, and I can add more data inside it, and I can delete it. And if I want to edit that, I can edit it like this. And all this data is coming from the Context API, and all the functions which are performing currently, like edit, delete, or adding a new data, and also the getting, is all coming from the Context API. In the last video, I showed you how to set up and configure Redux toolkit in Next.js 13. If you want to learn that, go check out my last video on setup and integrate Redux toolkit in Next.js 13. So before moving further, I am spending a lot of time creating these videos for you guys, so don't forget to subscribe my channel and like this video. So I have created an empty project in Next.js 13, and it is a JavaScript project. You can create a TypeScript project if you want. So here you can see that page.js is by default giving us this data, and I don't like .js. I'll be renaming it to the JSX. Okay, and then I will be inside the app directory. I can create different components, but I'll be creating a new folder in my source directory, and I'll name it context. And inside this folder, I'll create a new file, and I will name it postcontext.js. This file is be use client. Inside it, first of all, I need to add the children. Here I have passed this children, and inside it, I'll be creating a default state. I'll write const posts set posts, and then I'll use the use state hook, and it is going to have an initial state. So initial state that I'm going to give is the ID1. So this is the initial state. Then we can actually create different functions to manipulate this data. And we can create functions like adding a new post, edit post, delete post, or add multiple posts in this context API. But before that, let me go at the top and bring few stuff. So I'll be writing the create context. So create context, which is from the React, and then I need to write the export const post context, any name that you want, and using the create context hook. And here I can export this function, and I don't need to write anything over here. So it is actually a post provider. We need to change its name, post provider. And now let's come down and create few functions inside it. So first of all, I'm going to add post function, and it is going to take a new post arrow function, and then I can call this function post and then the new post. So for now, I'll only be calling getting this data, and I'll be calling this function to see if it works. Then we'll come back to this file and add some more functions for editing and deleting the data. So in this div, I'll be removing this div, and I will be returning the post context dot provider, and this is going to take a value, and this object, what we want other components to access from this context, or do we want this post and this function? What else? So for now we only have this post and add post function, so I can add the posts and then the add post function to it, so it will be available to all the components that is wrapped by this context provider. Okay, and then I will, let's write and context provider, and inside it I'll simply write a div and then the children, which is being passed. Okay, for now, that's pretty much it in this file. And now let's go to our layout.js file. And in this file, I need to wrap this children within that provider that I've just created. So I'll add a bit space. And here I will be, first let's try to add a div. This is how I like to do it, that this is a particular element, and then outside the div I'll be writing the post provider which I have already created. So I'll just copy, paste, and this post provider is already imported at the top. Okay. So now every data that is being passed from this post context through this value prop, like the posts and the add posts, are accessible to all the children of this layout. Means this is the parent layout, and all the children means all the components, all the routes of the application, whole application. Okay. So now let's try to come to this page.jsx, and inside it I'll be removing this div. And this is a server component. I don't want to add any, I don't want to make it use client. So I'll be creating a new component and make that component a client component, and I'll be importing that component in this particular file. Okay, so let's go ahead and first add that component. So in my source directory, I can create a new folder, components, and inside it I'll be creating a new folder again, or we can have so let's say we can create a folder. So inside it I can have the posts.jsx, and then I can have another file which would be the post.module.css. Okay, so let me fill up the CSS. This is not a design course, so I'm going to just copy paste some CSS inside it that I'll be needing in that posts file. So in this posts file, which I've created, so let me create that here, and it is exporting. So before writing anything inside it, let's come to the page and let's add that posts like this, and I'll try to import it at the top. So this has been imported, and this is imported. So now let's try to run this project and see if this post title is visible or not, and then we'll try to load the data from this context, and which is this post being passed in this value property. Okay. So there is an error if I go to the posts. So I have this posts and then exporting this posts. Make sure this has to be the capital letter, the start. And here I can actually post this again. And now it should be working fine. And let's go. And this post is visible. Now everything we'll be doing will be in this file, the post.jsx. So I'll be first importing few stuff at the top. So in order to fetch the data from that context, I need to use the use context hook. So use context from the React, which I have imported, and then I can import the post context from the context provider that I created. Okay, and lastly, let's import the styles from our styles.css files. Okay, so inside it, I can actually get the data using the use context hook. So let's try to add the get the post and then the add post function from that provider, and then use context, and inside it I can write the post context. So let's try to log this post now. This is the data that is being shown from the context. I saved that file 2 times, that's why it is printing this array 2 times. So any component in our project that needs to access the data of the context, they just need to write this line, and whatever data they need, whether it's the data or the function inside it. And this post provider actually can have a multiple use state hooks, different variables, different functions, and it can give this value prop any number of values inside it. It can be the hundreds of values inside it, and all those values can be accessed by any component just by using this particular line. This is awesome. So now let's move further and try to show this data in our UI. So now in order to fetch the data, let me first write some UI inside it. So inside the div, I will be pasting few HTML. This is not a design course, so I'm assuming that you have some understanding about the design stuff. And here I'm checking if the posts have some data inside it, mapping through each post. I'm showing the title, description, and here I have this edit button which I have to create yet, this function, and then I have this delete button after that. And then if the post does not exist, then I will just show no posts found. Okay, so let's save it. It will throw an error because of these functions. So for now, let's actually remove it from here. So let's save it now. Let's go. And now you can see that this data coming from that context provider, context API is being shown over here. And we are able to access this data from the context API in this particular component. Okay, so let's try to create a new data, and for that I'll be creating a new form. So I'll be pasting some HTML above this h1 tag inside the div. So this is the form that I have pasted. Let me format it with the prettier, so it is formatted properly. And now you can see that this is the form. It has input for the title, and it has this on change event for the set title hook. And then we need to create this use state hook yet. We have this text area for the description. It is setting up a new value of description in the use state value. And then we have this button. It is showing if the edit is true. This is something we need to create. So for now, let's comment this, and I'm going to add new post text over here. Okay, and now let's go ahead at the top and create these use state variables here. And now I'm going to add title, set title, and I need to use state hook. Okay, and it is empty, right? And just like the title, I can add the const, and it is the description, and then set description, use state, and it is going to be empty array. And after that, I'm going to create few more variables. This is the post ID, set post ID, and the use state is it is going to take the null. Okay, initially I'm not giving any value, any or even the negative or the zero value. It will be an integer. Okay, and then I will be creating is added, set added, use state, it is the false. I'll show you why I've created these two variables once I'll move further. So this error should be gone now. This is the error. And on button dot on click, it has to call this handle add post. So I need to create this function. I need to remove this first. I'll be coming back to add this check again. So at the top, I'll be creating a new function for adding a new post. So const handle add post, and it is going to take an event. And then first we can write the prevent default. I need this function because I'll be passing this function of the context hook a new post. So above that, I need to first check if the title and not description, then I'll be simply return. Okay, after that, I can create a new post. So new post equals to ID, and then I can write the date dot now. So let's add the title, and the description. Okay, so let's format it a bit. And after this, I will be actually calling that add post hook. But rather than sending this object, I'll just be passing this new post variable that I have created above. Uh, it's an extra curly braces. And once this is called, I can actually set the title empty and the set the description empty. So that's it for this function. Let's save it and let's go. And this form is visible. It is a nice looking form. Let's try to add a new post. Save it. And this has been added in our context API variable using this function. And now we need to implement edit and delete functionality. And before doing that, let's go to the post context file. And inside it, I'm going to create two functions similar to the add post, one for deleting and other for editing. So for edit, I'll be writing the edit post. And for editing, I need to pass an ID of a particular post which needs to be updated, and then the updated post data which will be passed from our client side component. And inside it I will be start writing some logic. So set post, which is the function, and I will be writing the previous posts first and then the arrow function, and it is going to return the previous post dot map. Okay, and inside it, this is just the JavaScript. I hope that you will be able to understand the logic which I'm trying to write. So if post.id equals to id, and it's going to return few stuff, and I'm not going to return updated post inside it. Instead, I'm going to write the spread operator, which is the post and then the updated post. Okay, and outside this, if I'm going to return the post, I need to add parentheses after that. So this is the logic. I hope that you will be able to understand. And after this, I'll be creating a new function for deleting the post. So delete post, it is going to take an ID only. We don't need any data. And for deleting, I'm going to add like updated posts equals to posts dot filter. You can write any logic that you want. So post and then the post dot id, it is going to be not equals to id. Okay, and then I'm going to write set post updated posts. Okay, so in this file, I think we are done with the functions. I'm going to save this file and I'm going to go to the post.jsx file. And inside it, let's first try to delete the post. And for deleting the post, I'll be writing a function over here, and it will be the so simple function. So const handle remove post, and it is going to take the post ID and then the delete post. We actually need to pass it from here. So add edit post and then the delete post. Once we pass it to this value prop, we need to receive it in our use context hook. So I'm going to edit post and then the delete post. So I'll be writing this delete post over here. So delete post and then the post ID. Okay, and now I need to use this function below where I removed it. So this is the delete button, and I can simply paste this function over here. Okay, and this is not a delete, this is the handle remove post actually. So I will can write an arrow function handle, and then I need to pass the post.id to it. There is an error. I think there is an extra parenthesis. Let's save it and let's go, and I'm going to refresh the page. I'm going to add a new post. This has been added. Let's try to delete the first one. And yes, delete functionality is working fine. Let's try to delete this. Let's refresh. And since it is a local state data, and that's why it's actually refreshing when I refresh the page. So our delete functionality is working fine. Now let's go ahead and write a function for editing a new functionality, and this function is going to be a bit longer. So let's try to create that. So I'm going to add the const edit a post equals to, it's going to take the post ID and then the arrow function. And first of all, I'm going to get the post by filtering out all the posts. So filter post, and then I'm going to add the arrow function post.id equals to post ID, and it is going to give us a single post but in the form of array. So let's start get the object directly by taking the value from the first index of this array. Okay, and then if I click on the edit, I have got this post and I've got this ID. So set title, and this is going to take the post dot title, and then the set description post dot description, set post id, and then set is added true is equals to true. Okay, and this function is going to be used in our button below. So we have this button and we have this on click, and I'm going to write an arrow function, and this is going to be called like this. So post.id, there is some extra parentheses again. So let's save it and see what happens. So we are not actually editing data right now. The reason I have added this function is when I click on this edit button, the data of this particular post will be pasted in these text boxes, and it is working fine now. Okay, and now let's go ahead and create another function, and I'm going to name it edit handle edit post. Now let's create a new function handle edit post, and the first line we have got the e.prevent default, and then we can copy this line from here. If the title and description does not exist, then we are going to simply return. Okay, and then I'm going to add the updated post equals to, and then the id is equals to the post id, and then we have the title and the description. And then I'm calling a function of our context API which I've created this edit post, and I need to pass it an ID and updated post data. So we have an ID and it is in the updated post dot ID, and then we have this updated post. Okay, next, once that edit stuff is complete, we can actually set the title, set the description empty, and set is added false as well. Okay, now we need to, I'm going to remove this log because it's printing data below this. So I'm just going to save it. Now we need to use this function below. So let's try to use it. And what I'm going to do is when I will be clicking on this edit button, I'm going to change the title of this button. So it is currently the add new post. I'm going to change its title from add new post to the edit post. Okay, and that's why I created this new hook is added. Okay, so now below this I'm going to first call that handle edit function below, and to do that I'm going to first of all let's uncomment this, and it is going to handle that, and this is the button which is showing over here, and inside it I'm going to write is added question mark, and then I'm going to add that function and then colon and then this function. And also I'm going to remove this constant text from here. Let's save this file, let's refresh, and let's try to add some posts here. Okay, and if I click on the edit, let's see that if the text of this button changes or not. If I click on edit, you can see that the data is filled and the text of this button is changed. So let's try to update the description of the second post, And if I click on the edit post, it should call the context API function that we have written, and this data should be updated over here. If I click on the edit post, and yes, this has been updated and these text boxes are empty now. Okay, so our functionality of CRUD on this page is completed, and we are utilizing the context API in this post.jsx component, and this is the client component. Okay, so any other component that will need this data will just be using this use context, and they can receive this data. So currently we have this data as constant. What we do usually is we get the data from the APIs, and on the client components you must be using some kind of hook like use effect hook, and call an API, get the data, and what we can do is we can fill up this data in this context API. And we can have another function like add constant add posts. Rather than a single post, we can pass the posts to it. Okay, so in this post we can simply add all the posts to it which are being passed from here. Okay, so this function can be used by components to fill up the data whenever the data comes from the APIs. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it for this video. I hope that you have liked and got the idea of how to implement context API in our Next.js 13 projects. So don't forget to subscribe my channel, hit the like button, and thank you so much for watching.